Today's episode is all about how to build a team in real estate. So I brought on my friend, Chris Arnold, who's a real leader. This guy's a multitasker, he's a visionary, and he's learned how to work on a business instead of in a business. Chris Arnold is actually the co-founder of Multipliers, and that's a mastermind group that I'm personally involved in. He set this mastermind up from Tulum, Mexico, where he lives, but he has a business flipping houses in the United States by the hundreds. He wholesales houses and flips houses all the time from Tulum, Mexico. And that's why I want to talk to him about building a team, because he's proven he can do it. Every single one of us need to learn how to be in the places that we dream of and own a business in the place where it makes sense and it all flow together naturally. And that's why I wanted to share this conversation I had with Chris Arnold with you right now. Okay, take us back a little bit to the start. So you're this guy, you're running around. Tell us from the beginning how you get into real estate, and then you start doing the do, and then all of a sudden you end up in Tulum.
Yeah, man. My story kind of starts at an interesting point. When I was the kid in high school that got in a lot of trouble. My dad will tell you that most of his gray hairs came from me. And so I had a really big, really kind of life-changing point in my life in high school, and really got pulled away from a lot of things that I had gotten involved into. And that change, God really stepped into my life. And I said, man, I want to spend the rest of my life serving people. I don't know what that looks like, but that's what I want to do. And so, being 18 years old, it's like, well, what do you do? And so I went to seminary. The challenge, though, that I realized going through seminary was I just didn't fit the conventional role. I wasn't going to go be a pastor of a church. I wasn't going to be a missionary. And so I can remember I was eating at Chick-fil-A, eating a chicken biscuit, looking up on the mural of how Kathy Truitt had built Chick-fil-A and utilized a for-profit company to take those resources and impact the world with it. And I was just looking up on this wall of like all of these incredible things that he was funding through business. And that was the first time that seed got planted that maybe my journey in my future is going to be the business route. So at that time, I didn't know much. I didn't know anything about business. I got a master's in theology. They don't give you business courses there. And so at that point, I was like, really the only vehicle that I understand that makes sense to me, that seems like it gives both that freedom of lifestyle as well as that capital to reinvest back into charity is real estate. And so I simply started, Mitch, by getting my license as a real estate agent. I went to work for Century 21, calling expireds, FSBOs, and taking listings. That's how that whole game started for me 15 years ago.
Where does the investing light bulb, when does that go off?
And that doesn't go off for probably another, I'm going to say 6-7 years. So I got caught up again, brokerage world, right? We got some really solid brokerage players in multipliers. I went what was called the MREA route. Gary Keller at that time had written this book, The Millionaire Real Estate Agent, and how you could build this team inside of Keller Williams. And so I spent the first, handful, 5, 6, 7 years, somewhere in there, really focused on scaling my real estate team. And I actually went independent and built a brokerage independent at a certain point. It wasn't until I met a good buddy of mine and we were sitting down eating. It's funny how many things happen over eating. Having a pizza at Neo's Pizza out in Cedar Hill, Texas. And he says, man, I'm looking for something to do. I've got this construction background. I'm like, well, heck, I got a real estate background. Why don't we go flip a house? So it was more like just something to kind of consider to do. And so probably about 2 weeks later, I came across the first deal. You know how it is if you're a broker, deals come across your table. I just didn't really know what to do with it. And we went and flipped our first house on Calmia Drive and made $15,000 on our first flip. We didn't know what we were doing. I didn't know I needed insurance. I didn't know anything about hard money lending. I mean, it was a ready, fire, aim, but somehow we made it out, made 15,000, and it was like, well, heck, let's go do that again a few more times. And so that's how the whole investment side started for me.
I hope you're enjoying my conversation with Chris Arnold. This guy's really got it figured out. Before we get back to him, please check out the like button, check out the share button, and of course, subscribe if you haven't already. All right, we're going to get right back into this conversation with Chris Arnold. So you started doing the investment side, but it doesn't sound like you're focusing on fixing and flipping right now. Are you still doing some of that, or did you morph into a wholesaling?
We morphed into wholesaling. We started flipping about 45 properties a year. And if you're in at that level, dealing with what it takes to manage that many properties with subcontractors, you kind of go, hey, is there an easier way to scale this? And so what I realized, I'd rather take a fast nickel than a slow dime. And that's what I really feel like wholesaling is. It's a faster nickel. It's more scalable. So what we did was we shifted more of our weight and time into wholesaling. And so fundamentally, we would flip the best and wholesale the rest became our model moving forward.
Then when did you get turned on to multipliers and start that?
Yeah, so I had really set a goal for myself. Being young, by the time I got into real estate, I was like, let's say, early 20s. I said that I would devote 10 years of my life to the success side. And I think, every person and every entrepreneur, men and women particularly understand that. Like, I need to learn how to provide for myself. I'm going to need to learn how to provide for a family at some point when I get married. And so I'm going to put my head down for 10 years. And I'm going to do my very best to become the best business person that I can be. But in 10 years, so I don't forget why I'm doing all this. In the meantime, we did things like homeless ministry and, we go into juvenile detention centers, worked with integrity mentors, different things like that. But I wasn't giving a lot of my time to that. I was staying plugged in, but it wasn't the majority of where my thought process was going. So at 10 years, I had marked it down and I put my head up. And at that time, I told my buddy, I said, we're going to go and we're going to have coffee every Saturday morning until we figure out how we're going to transition from success over to more significance. And that's what we did. We had coffee for about 9 months. We kicked around, Mitch, all kinds of crazy ideas. And finally, we got a vision for multipliers. And what we realized was we wanted to lead leaders. We wanted to influence influencers. And more importantly, we wanted these great men to finish the race well, because there's a lot at stake for a high-level entrepreneur. If they disqualify themselves, they leave a wake of bodies, whether that be family, to friends, to employees, to everybody that follows them on social media and listens to their podcasts. And so from that, we birthed this concept of making sure that our men finished the legacy that they were called to fulfill. And that's how it began. And so we launched.
Wow. So how old is Multipliers?
5 years.
When do you decide in this chain of events, you're not going to do this from DFW anymore?
Man, I'm a guy that knew early on that I didn't want to stay in Dallas. I had this vision of living in the Caribbean. Maybe I saw one too many Corona commercials, but there was just something that enticed me about living in the Caribbean and being on the water. And because I'm an outdoors guy, I didn't really get much replenishment in Dallas. Even though it's a big city, there's not a lot to do, right? Just the typical grab a cup of coffee, go to dinner, see a movie, etc. And so I'd written that down, literally kind of on my vision board. And probably about 3 years before I moved, we made a pretty heavy shift into the virtual world. At that time, it was really more of a newer concept. There wasn't a lot of people doing this, but I knew that there are certain freedoms that exist. We're all into real estate for freedom of time. And we also get in to have freedom of resources, to be able to spend our money on the things that we value most. But another freedom that I've always personally held to is freedom of location. I don't want to run a business that locks me into a geographical area, because I believe that there's value in changing our environments. People change us, environments change us. And after as long as I had been in Dallas by that point, 12 years, it was no longer challenging me. I don't know, Mitch, you lived somewhere so long that you don't even look to the right or the left when you drive, because you just have everything memorized. And that's where I found myself. And I was like, you know what? This environment isn't sharpening me anymore. And at this point, we had pretty much gone 80, 90% of our staff were virtual. And I was showing up every day to this big office with just a few of us left. So we had a big office with everyone in there, and we had made that transition. I remember thinking to myself, why do I need to be in this office? And everyone else who worked for me was like, Chris, we're all virtual. What are you still doing in Dallas? And so at that point, I took a vacation down to Tulum. I instantly fell in love, and my wife and I literally packed up everything and moved within 90 days of the first time we visited. And sometimes you just got to go for it, make a decision and make it happen. So we did. And we've been down here 4 years now.
And today, right now, I want to offer to you, free of charge, a webinar called The Art of Creative Real Estate Investing. All you have to do is click on this link or go to 1000houses.com/free-stuff and scroll up and down the home page until you find the link that reads The Art of Creative Real Estate Investing webinar. Click on it. It'll be automatically digitally downloaded to you in a snap, and you will be all the better for it. In that webinar, you're going to learn how I have done thousands of houses, selling them with seller financing and collecting mortgage payments for years and years and years. It's done me very well. So check it out. This is Mitch Stephen, and I will see you into the next episode.